If you're like me, you've probably wondered what an underwater city would look like. How would it function? How normal would life be down there? Some movies and pieces of literature have given us a peek of what it could be, but none of them actually let us live in them, to experience it. Enter Bioshock. Bioshock lets us do exactly that, to experience what it would be like to be inside a city functioning at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, you might think it'd be majestic, the technological wonders that man would have had to come up with to achieve such a feat. But remember, however majestic the feat, we are all still men, easily corrupted and confused by things like greed, power, politics, morality, and vanity. It doesn't matter where we live. Where man goes, the possibility of corruption will surely follow, even to the depths of the ocean. To Rapture. Welcome back to the channel, Valmiobra here, and today we'll be reviewing Bioshock Remastered and figuring out, is it worth playing in 2023? Now, since Bioshock's been out for a while, I probably don't need to worry about stating spoilers, but if you haven't played the first game yet, then you have been warned. I honestly can't think how I'd be able to talk about this game without showing any spoilers. Now let's get on with the video. Bioshock is a first-person shooter role-playing game developed by 2K Boston, later to be called Irrational Games, and 2K Australia. Published by 2K Games, it was first released for Windows and Xbox 360 platforms in August 2007 and was ported to PS3 in 2008. A remastered version of the game would then be released in 2016, along with the two other games in this franchise. The story starts with you, Jack, riding an airplane over the Atlantic Ocean. Moments later, the plane starts to crash. It hits the water and you frantically try to surface as parts of the plane sink to the endless abyss below. You break the surface to a sea of flame and debris, and in the distance, a lone lighthouse. You hurriedly swim to it to get out of the freezing water. You open the door, and the first thing that greets you is a giant statue of a man looking down on you. The words, "No gods or kings, only man," hangs just below it. Immediately, you figure out that this isn't an ordinary lighthouse. You pass by the statue towards what looks like a spherical transportation device, a bathysphere. With nowhere else to go, you ride it underwater, and as you get deeper into the ocean, a quick slideshow that shows a glimpse of your destination plays. And with its end, the bathysphere moves above the rocks to reveal a technological wonder, Rapture.
A city where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small.
Now, that's not where the introduction for this game ends, but that scene is probably one of the most memorable intros to a game in the history of gaming. Seeing the city lights in the depths of the ocean, the foreshadowing of the Big Daddy in the tubes, and when you arrive, the sudden realization that something wrong is going on, it really sets the tone for the game and just sucks you in right from the beginning. As you arrive in Rapture, you're contacted by Atlas. Surprised that someone new actually arrived, he goes on to guide you through the dark and dangerous city that has become of Rapture. The scenic exterior of this once grand city of the depths now houses a slew of genetically mutated men and women, hostile to each other, scrambling around to find Adam, a substance capable of rewriting genetic material and can basically give you features and powers beyond what a normal human could ever possess. In the beginning of the game, you and Atlas work together. You're tasked with helping him reunite with his family in a different part of Rapture that is initially sealed off to him. As you progress, a seemingly sinister character makes himself known. Andrew Ryan, founder of Rapture. He initially thinks of you as a Russian spy and does everything he can to stop you and Atlas from reaching your goals. You later find out that Atlas and Ryan actually know each other and were political enemies before. A few dark twists and turns later, your goal shifts from helping Atlas to killing Andrew Ryan. And that's probably where I'll stop with the story. The twists that this game presented were so bizarre back when I first played it that I still got goosebumps during the big reveal cutscene. The story itself is well paced and it doesn't get too confusing on its own, but to the ones who want to know the deeper story and history of Rapture, there are tons of audio logs scattered around for you to pick up and listen to whenever you want. There's a good amount of notable characters in the game, and while some you never really see in the game, alive that is, their dialogue largely contributes to the world building. Having to listen to lots of audio logs might turn people off, but the voice acting is so natural and fits the setting of the game so well that it doesn't feel like a chore to go through them at all. It's worth noting that the game has 3 endings, but 2 of them are nearly identical. The game's story also changes a little depending on a few actions you do in the game. More on that in the gameplay section. Bioshock plays like any other FPS, so controls shouldn't be a problem here. The game also gives out hints every now and then to teach you the mechanics, but where the game gets its identity is with the introduction of plasmids and tonics. Plasmids come from processed atom that allows genetic modification and mutation, essentially giving someone superpowers or the equivalent of magic in a fantasy setting. Tonics act as the passive skill version of plasmids. There's quite a number of plasmids and tonics to choose from, but at the start of the game, you're limited to only 2 slots for plasmids and per tonic tree. You see, while plasmids only exist in one category, tonics have 3: combat, physical, and engineering. Combat tonics, as the name implies, enhance abilities normally used during combat. Physical tonics boost things like armor, how much health you get from eating snacks and booze, increasing your movement speed and attack speed with a wrench. And engineering tonics usually help with the crafting mechanic, or hacking security bots and cameras. You can gain additional slots by purchasing them in a gatherer's garden. More on that later. Mix and match your tonics to make the ideal jack that could survive the horrors of Rapture. Plasmids range from shooting out lightning bolts, burning things with a snap of a finger, like Roy Mustang, blowing people away with a gust of wind, and even sending a swarm of bees over to repeatedly sting your enemies. What makes them interesting though is how they interact with your main weapons and the environment. Electrocution doesn't deal damage, but stuns the enemy for a duration. While stunned, the next attack deals more damage. Moreover, if the target is standing in water, the target is then stunned and takes a huge amount of damage. Take note that you can also get caught up in this effect. Other plasmids work in the same way. Incineration can melt ice to unlock certain areas or burn oil on the ground. Freezing someone allows for a potential instant kill if you can deal enough damage to shatter the ice. You can use telekinesis to catch grenades midair and throw them back at enemies, or grab items seemingly out of reach. There are quite a few interactions of plasmids with your arsenal, the enemies, and the environment, so try stuff out and see what works. Talking about the arsenal now, you have a good number of weapons to choose from. You have the wrench, pistol, machine gun, shotgun, grenade launcher, chemical sprayer, crossbow, and last but not the least, the camera. They work in the way you probably think they work. The main mechanic of combat in the game is shoot the enemy with whatever weapon you choose until they die without dying yourself. Aiming for the head deals more damage, and some weapons suit some enemies more than others. Additionally, all ranged weapons have 2 other ammunition types you can switch from, depending on the situation. Things like anti-personnel and anti-armor rounds for the pistol and machine gun, shock and explosive buckshot for the shotgun, incendiary and trap bolts for the crossbow, so on and so forth. Choose the right ammunition for the situation and combo your weapons with your plasmids, and you'll surely do a quick job of any splicer wanting to harvest your organs. Speaking of splicers, these comprise most of the enemies you'll face in Rapture. Splicers are people who have been physically mutated and or mentally scarred using Atom in their bodies. There's not much variety with the splicers though. Some use wrenches, some guns, and some can control security bots, and others can appear and reappear to throw fireballs at you. If I remember correctly, there are around 5 types of splicers and they all share similar appearances. Combat gets a little tedious once you've met them all and know how to deal with them. There are a few bosses in the game, but they're basically beefed up versions of the usual splicers you encounter. Bosses serve more towards the story aspect of the game, as they're all notable names in the lore of Bioshock. Now where the combat gets really intense is when you're fighting the Big Daddy. Remember what I said about splicers being addicted to Atom, and that plasmids and tonics are processed Atom? Now where do you think Atom comes from? Well, I'm not exactly sure about its origins, although I'm sure there's an audio log in the game that explains that, but what I am sure of is that there are little sisters strolling around Rapture carrying giant syringes that extract Atom from dead bodies. They're not strolling alone though. They'll always have a Big Daddy to protect them. Imagine large, bulky, metallic diving suits walking around with the ground shaking with their every step. Their deep groaning echoing from the walls, and either a large drill or a rivet gun in hand. These bad boys are ready to fight, and you'll best stay out of their way if you don't have a good reason to. Unfortunately, you do have a good reason. In order to collect Atom, you need to get through the Big Daddy to either harvest or rescue the little sister. More on that a little bit later. There are two types of these enemies: Rosies and Bouncers. Rosies tend to fight from a distance with the rivet guns and throw landmines at you, while Bouncers shake the ground, leaving you disoriented and charge at you with their drills. You'll need to be very alert and have a good understanding of the combinations of your weapons and plasmids if you want to take one of these down. Anti-armor rounds do a great job at dealing with these foes, so make sure you always have some stowed. After beating the Big Daddy, you get a choice of harvesting or rescuing the little sister. Harvesting grants you the maximum amount of Atom you can get from an individual sister, but it ties you in with one of the bad endings. Rescuing the little sister gives you much less Atom initially, but gives you a huge compensation of Atom and even free plasmids and resources further down the line. The choice is yours to make, and the story takes its normal course until the later parts of the game, where it changes slightly depending on the choices here. Sometimes you'll see a Big Daddy roaming around without a little sister. If you go to the pause menu, there's an indicator below that shows you how many little sisters can be saved in that level. If you still have some to rescue, or harvest, you heartless fiend, then wait till the daddies walk towards a vent and calls a little sister out. Then kill the Big Daddy in front of her. Use the collected Atom you get to buy new plasmids, upgrade your health or EVE, which is your mana, or increase the number of plasmids and tonics you can have equipped at a Gatherer's Garden. There are 8 levels in the game and they're separated by bathyspheres. You can return to any level you want to backtrack the areas you've missed, or if you left a little sister behind. Luckily, the map is very intuitive and shows you the areas where you've been and haven't been, which makes map exploration a breeze. Levels are mostly linear, but there's a little room for exploration. The game actually rewards the curious with plenty of crafting materials, resources, and audio logs in the hidden nooks and crannies of Rapture. Last piece of information for the gameplay part: remember the camera I mentioned earlier as part of your arsenal? Well, you can take pictures of your enemies, dead or alive, to research them. Researching them grants increased damage towards them, gives you hints about their weaknesses, and sometimes even provides you with new tonics to use. You get bonus points for capturing an action shot and with multiple enemies of the same type in one shot. So go out there and capture the moment. The final boss of the game wasn't too hard. Moves were very predictable during the whole course of the fight. The story is the best part of this game, in my opinion, but the gameplay doesn't fall too far behind. Now let's move on to the last part of the review: replayability. I completed the game in around 18 hours. A quick search on the internet says that if you try to 100% the game, it'll take you around 22 hours of game time. Now that's a fair amount of content to run through for a linear game, if you ask me. While the game has multiple endings, you can't really change the course of the game too much outside of rescuing or harvesting little sisters. It's more of a one-time big time experience if you ask me, as most story-driven linear experiences should be. Small update that I discovered while I was recording: you can actually go for New Game Plus, where your powers and weapons carry over to the next playthrough. Now with all that being said, we arrive at the final verdict for Bioshock Remastered. Is it worth playing in 2023? I actually have two answers for this. If you haven't played this game yet, go for it. Trust me, I wish I could play this game for the first time again. The main selling point for this game is its story and how it immerses you in its world, and it does those things flawlessly. Now, if you have played it before and want to see the changes the remastered version has to offer, there's no need for that. Graphics weren't updated much, so the game still shows its age. The only notable difference is that there are golden reels scattered throughout Rapture that unlock conversations of the developers regarding the game. Nothing that changes the game at all. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Bioshock Remastered and what you think of the video. I hope you liked it, and if you did, consider subscribing. I've got a long list of games to review, and I can't wait to talk about them with you guys. Now that's about it for the video. See you in the next one, and have a great day ahead.